Hello and welcome to day 53 of the 90-day video challenge. I am here today to make a plea for a candidate that I am very excited about. Now, I've said many times before that it's not just about the presidential election that's important, but we really need to pay attention to all of those smaller campaigns as well, from your mayors and your council members all the way up to Senate. And there is a race going on right now in South Carolina that I am ecstatic about. This no-name candidate, very much like President Obama, is coming seemingly out of nowhere and giving Lindsey Graham a run for his money. Now, of course, we can't all vote for Jamie Harrison because we don't all live in South Carolina, but we all have an opportunity to support his phenomenal campaign. Democrats don't do well in South Carolina. However, he is really making waves with his grassroots campaign. Now, this is a young man who has worked a long time in the South Carolina Democratic Convention. So he is known in the Democratic circles, but he is just phenomenal in that he was born and raised there. He was born into poverty. He's very relatable to many people, born to a single mother, raised by his grandparents, grew up on Medicare, grew up depending on public assistance, and rose through the ranks to go to my dream school, Yale, and then go on to Georgetown Law. Now, with that background, he could have stayed in Washington. He probably could have gone anywhere in the world, but he has gone back to South Carolina and has always been fighting for the people of South Carolina. He talks about issues that I don't hear anyone else talking about. A third of the state not having access to LTE and high-speed internet. Our kids in school not being able to compete with the rest of the world because they can't get connected to the rest of the world. So many cities in South Carolina that don't have an OBGYN within a 25-mile radius, which is critical to women's health care. There's just so many things that he really is passionate about. The medical care situation in South Carolina, the access to medications, the access to doctors, the access to health care. These are things that he fights for. And he is at this time pretty much neck and neck in the polls with Lindsey Graham, which is unheard of. They haven't had a strong Democratic candidate in over 20 years. And so far, he's raised more money than any Democratic candidate in the past 2 decades. He still has a small grassroots campaign with not a high budget, but what he has been able to do with very little is practically miraculous, considering that Trump is personally going back and forth to South Carolina to campaign on behalf of Lindsey Graham, and all of their GOP supporters who have deep pockets are throwing their money behind Lindsey Graham. So for Jamie Harrison to only be 2 points behind in the polls, and there's often about a 3% margin of error in those polls, that is astounding. So what I am asking you guys to do, because I saw his advertisement recently and I myself donated to his campaign, he's only asking for $5 donations. Of course, if you can do more, it would be great if you could, but I am asking those who are touched at all by his story, visit his website, and I put the link on this post, jamieharrison.com. Find out more about him, read his story, read his passion, and if you are touched to do so, please give a donation to help his campaign. He's trying to raise $200,000. That's his end of the quarter mark, and that is not a lot of money for a Senate campaign, but he has done a lot with a little, and I'm just so encouraged that he's actually got support from people in all corners of South Carolina. There are people who voted for Lindsey Graham multiple times who are now starting to switch to Jamie Harrison's side. It's extremely encouraging that we can flip this Senate seat blue and really start to make some change in the Senate, because it's going to take more than just the presidency. It also takes the Senate and the House to be working together, and we have to get rid of these people who have vowed to do nothing if Trump doesn't get reelected, or who just wants to be Trump's mouthpiece and who's buddy-buddy with Trump, and we see that that is not being effective at all. So I am so encouraged at this young man who has seemingly come out of nowhere and is truly seeming to give a run for this Senate seat. And again, I encourage you to go to his website, find out more about him for yourself, read his articles, look at his interviews, and if you are touched at all by this story, please send a donation to his campaign. And for those of you who know people in South Carolina, please encourage your family members, your friends, your network to vote in November, not just for the presidency, but all those other tickets make a big difference. This is our time to flip the Senate and really get this country back on a middle ground versus an extreme right ground. And I think that he will be amazing, not just for the people in South Carolina and the changes that he's passionate about bringing there, but also I'd love to see what he's going to do in the Senate as a new, fresh face and voice that is committed to people's issues, that's not bought by lobbyists and big name organizations. So JamieHarrison.com, young black man in South Carolina making waves, and he seems to have a real shot at taking Lindsey Graham off that pedestal and changing lives for the better in South Carolina. Please join me in giving him a look, and if you are so inclined, donating. Have a great weekend, and I will see you guys tomorrow.